Reaffirmation agreement.
What is that?
Meeting of the creditors.
Are they all going to show up?
I declare bankruptcy.
Oh my God.
Welcome to another episode of Attorneys Are Human Too, Season 3, Episode 3, I declare bankruptcy. I'm Steve Wallace.
And I'm Selena Muzic.
And we're at it again. Whoa, I just want, before we start, I just want to thank all of the folks that have downloaded our new season. The response has been amazing, and it's a great conversation starter whenever I mention to anybody that we have a podcast. People love it, and we appreciate all the support that we have.
Yeah, it's something to listen to while you're driving. It's a little informative. We're a little ridiculous, but I think it's good.
I can tell you that this episode will be informative but ridiculous.
Well, Stephen, so we are experts. I want to say experts in the bankruptcy field. And what are the different chapters of bankruptcy that you can file?
Sure, that's a great question. And it really goes to determine who actually is filing. If it's a personal bankruptcy, when it's couples or an individual, there are three types of bankruptcies. There's Chapter 7, Chapter 11, and Chapter 13. And I'll break those down for you in a minute. And then businesses can file a Chapter 11 bankruptcy and a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. And if you're a farmer, you can file a Chapter 12 bankruptcy. So we handle both personal and business bankruptcies. But the two most common bankruptcies, if you're an individual or a married couple, is Chapter 7 and Chapter 13. And Chapter 7, assuming that you qualify from an income standpoint, as well as you don't have a lot of property that's non-exempt, then ultimately you don't have to pay anything back to your creditors.
Okay, and can we go into the nitty-gritty of what it means to say, I don't have a lot of property? Mm-hmm. Because, we're in South Florida and people think, hey, I have all these assets, but I should be able to file for bankruptcy. So can you tell us a little bit or elaborate on what you can do and what you can't do on a Chapter 7?
Sure. So we're governed by, there's two types of exemptions. So when I'm talking about exemptions, there's certain amounts of money or certain value of property that's exempt under Florida law. We generally use Florida exemptions because Florida is as well known as a debtor haven. In Florida, if you have a homestead property, meaning your primary residence, you have unlimited equity that's exempt under Florida law, meaning that you won't lose your home if you file bankruptcy.
Oh my God, that's great.
Provided, here's the provided though. There's always a provided.
Oh, I knew there was a but.
You have to continue to make your mortgage payments. You have to continue to pay the taxes, the insurance, the homeowner association or condominium association if you're in one of those regimes.
So I'm going to throw a curveball at you. What if you're already behind, but we get a lot of clients, and I typically sit with the clients a lot. A lot of times they're crying and they say, well, I haven't made my mortgage payment in 3 months, but I want to file Chapter 7 so I can eliminate all my creditor debt and continue making my mortgage payment. But now if they file, would they lose their home?
Well, generally, if somebody's behind on their mortgage a certain number of months, we would generally transition them over to a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, which is a repayment plan. Generally, for example, if they're behind on their mortgage for 3 months, as long as they continue to make their monthly mortgage payments, the 3 months behind, which we call an arrearage, they can pay that 3 months over a 5-year period. So as long they'll make their monthly mortgage payment and then 1/60th of what they're behind in. So it's a very effective way that people are allowed to keep their homes.
Oh, okay, that's great. But what's the catch-22 now? Because if they go into a 13, does it cost more?
It does cost a little bit more, just because there's more work for us to do because we have to go to a confirmation hearing and we have to go to a meeting of the creditors, and oftentimes it takes a couple months to get the plan confirmed. What I would tell you also, the other thing to make certain is the fact that they have to qualify also from an income basis. They have to have disposable monthly income, and a percentage of that disposable monthly income has to go to their unsecured creditor. So they can't just get the best of both worlds where they would file bankruptcy and not pay back any money to their unsecured creditors. If they want to keep their home and they're behind, a Chapter 13 is generally the best way of accomplishing that.
Okay. So I want to bring it back and focus on 7 right now.
Sure.
So what is a means test?
Okay. So the means test, it used to be, and I'm young, but I've been practicing bankruptcy law for quite a while. And I remember prior to 2005, it didn't matter what your income was. If you were able to have exempt assets and there were no unexempt assets, you could file a Chapter 7 if you made $1 million.
What?
Yeah.
What changed? What?
Well, in 2005, Congress said that's not fair. And so they established the means test. So, for example, you look at the median income in the county that you live. So, for example, just hard and fast numbers. If you're single and you don't have any children, the median income in Palm Beach County is between $50,000 to $55,000. If you're over that amount and there's certain exemptions, there's always in bankruptcy, the one thing you'll learn is there's a bunch of different exemptions. And that's one of the benefits of working with Selena and I, because we're well informed in the exemptions and the nitty gritty and the gray area. And we always are counseling clients to make the right decision. We're not a bankruptcy law firm mill where we just want to push people in, whether it's right for them or not.
Yeah, no.
We take a very holistic approach. And the one thing that Selena and I both tell our clients is we love you as a client, but we don't want you as a repeat bankruptcy client.
Yeah, I don't want you to come back. I want you to come back and tell me, hey, I'm ready to buy a house, which we have.
Many times we have.
Yeah. But yeah, going back to those the way I try to explain it to clients, because I think it's sometimes difficult for them to understand like the exemptions. I tell them, you have this going on and I need to apply this to protect you. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a layer cake.
Yeah, it's exactly. We have to plug the right layer into their situation. And so the other thing that we're able to do, so there are certain occasions where people are under the means test, meaning they would qualify for Chapter 7, but oftentimes we see that they may own a car outright. Cars are always a challenge for us. Mm-hmm. And if you own your home and you're single, we can only exempt $1,000 of equity in your vehicle. If you're married, then you can exempt. And
they recently increased that. It's $5,000 now.
It's $5,000.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I still don't even think that's enough.
It's not.
I think that there has to be a look back because how expensive things have gotten.
Right.
That a person making even, to be honest, a person making $100,000 a year is still kind of struggling in Florida.
I mean, we see people in Palm Beach County that are paycheck to paycheck making $125,000, $150,000. Now, that's a cautionary tale because especially in Boca and Delray, people live way beyond their means.
Correct. But we've met clients that we've sat down and we've discussed and we've said, okay, this is their picture financially. They're taking care of children, elderly parents, medications, and they make good money, but it's not working out for them. It's just not financially.
Yeah. One of the benefits that Selena and I are able to do is the first thing that we do when we counsel a client is determine what got us there. And we can look at a budget and we can pinpoint an item on your budget. And oftentimes it's cigarettes and alcohol, unfortunately, or gambling.
Or divorce.
Or divorce. Yeah, we see that as well. But we can look at your budget and tell you, like, I'll give you an example. So I was speaking to a client yesterday that was inquiring about whether or not they're a candidate to file. And I noticed that they had a motorcycle. And that motorcycle payment was astronomical. And I told her that if you got rid of that motorcycle, then you would qualify. Not only would you qualify, but also you would be in a much better financial state. So oftentimes people, for just the basis of human nature, they oftentimes make poor decisions, whether it's
they base it on what they want,
right, or what is their projected image amongst their friends and family and community.
Correct. That's why I always tell people, is this something that you need? Can you live without this?
Right.
And I tell them too, it doesn't mean that you're never going to have it again. You can, once you get rid of all your debt, restructure things, maybe you'll make more income, then you'll be in a better situation where you can afford that. And I think that's kind of my approach with clients. Unfortunately, my experience is every time they come to us, they're in tears.
Yep.
And I've gotten people telling me, hey, am I going to go to jail if I file bankruptcy? I think that's unfortunately, being Hispanic it's very frowned upon to file for bankruptcy. They think you're going to go to jail. They think it's a sin. And I try to explain to them, this is not it. This is a way of helping you.
Right. We notice that also. I notice it here in Boynton Beach, where our office is located. We have a more graying population. And under that generation or the generation before them, if you don't pay your debts, it's not only you're a business failure, but you're a life failure. I'm going to give you a couple examples. Like, I grew up in upstate New York in Syracuse, and I learned bankruptcy when I was in law school, because my first year of law school, I worked for a bankruptcy lawyer in Syracuse, and she taught me from soup to nuts how to do everything. And I actually would go on the road. I would have to drive, because Syracuse is pretty rural. So I would have to drive to people's trailers and go to their house, go to their trailers, and go through and complete the petition for them. And along those lines, I will tell you that my father, may he rest in peace, would read the newspaper and read the bankruptcy filings, and he'd tell me, so-and-so filed bankruptcy. Did you know that?
Oh my God, they would publish your name?
Yeah, in the Syracuse newspaper.
How? What?
So it's public record. They don't do that in South Florida, but I will tell you, at least when I was growing up in upstate New York, they did do that.
That's so embarrassing. They should stop that. Upstate New York, stop that.
And the other thing I want to mention to you is that another item in upstate New York. So my secured transactions professor, Professor Samuel Donnelly, may he rest in peace, he actually, in Syracuse, up until the mid-'70s, there was a debtor prison. So if you didn't pay your bills, you would go to jail.
Well, that's why clients always come and say, am I going to go to jail?
Right. So him and his wife actually lobbied the legislature, and that was banned in New York. But it is a legitimate practice. So those people that say that, there was a historical basis for that.
I never knew that. I just thought, when they bring that up to me, it makes me look over their documents more with a fine-tooth comb, because then for me, it presents the issue of, well, are you hiding something that you're concerned about this? And a lot of times it's not. It's nothing. It's just fear.
Right. And that's one of the things, that we pride ourselves on, is being sympathetic to people's situations. I mean, you don't know how anybody, how life truly is until you experience it in someone else's shoes. A couple of things, though, that you don't want to do when you come to our appointment.
Yeah.
Why don't you start with a couple things not to do when you come see the Wallace Law Group?
Well, don't come and tell me you want to file bankruptcy, but you have money hidden away and you just don't want to pay your debt.
That's bankruptcy fraud. And in South Florida, they do, the U.S. attorney has a bankruptcy fraud unit, and they do actively prosecute cases.
Correct. Or my favorite is, hey, well, can I jack up all my credit cards and stuff before we file? And I always look at these people, I'm like, no.
That's bankruptcy fraud also.
Yeah, they get mad at me when I tell them no.
Here's one of my favorites. One day before we had to meet with the trustee, it's under the bankruptcy code, it's called a Section 341 meeting, affectionately known as a meeting of the creditors. Selena got a call, and she frantically called me, and she said, our client called us and said that her boyfriend wanted to give her $50,000 in cash and a Bentley.
I'm never going to forget that, because I've never sat at the office and was just profusely sweating.
Right. You were shaking.
I was losing my mind. I was going to start crying. I told you. I was like, I'm going to cry. I'm going to cry.
So don't do that, because we need Selena happy. We can't have her cry.
Yeah, no. And not just that. I get that way because I want our bankruptcies to be done the right way. And I want the clients to walk away, happy and knowing that they did the right thing. And when it's situations like that, I'm like, this is not the right thing. And where did you get a boyfriend that's giving you $51,000 in a Bentley?
I don't know. But maybe I'm looking in the wrong direction. I don't know. So also along those lines, there's certain debts that are not dischargeable. So one debt that's not dischargeable is any judgment that's against somebody for fraud. Yeah. Federal taxes, unless a very minimum exception, those are not dischargeable either.
But we've discharged some tax debt.
No, older debts,
yes,
with exceptions. But for a general rule is they are not dischargeable. Also, if you have a restitution judgment or a restitution lien against you, that is not dischargeable.
What about student loans? That's like the big hot topic right now because students are struggling.
Yep.
And, the debt is huge and it's kind of like you're paying that until the day you die. It's just very expensive. My first question is it dischargeable? And will there be any changes in the law that it will allow you to discharge some of it?
So there is a provision in the bankruptcy code that provides for a hardship discharge for student loans. The case law is very, very specific, and there really is there's no fact pattern that would really meet that case. It's basically the example would be that was in the case was somebody went to school, got on the job training for construction work, and then they were in an accident and they lost one of their limbs. Under that scenario, that student loan would be dischargeable.
But you have to lose a limb.
Right. So needless to say, like, for example, let's say you go to law school, let's say hypothetically, and you're just decided it's not for you, and you work retail. That's not a hardship discharge.
Okay.
It's an extreme example. So I'm a member of the National Association of Consumer Bankruptcy Attorneys, and there's always been a major lobby to get a student loan discharge, especially in light. There's a bubble that's going to be bursting that already has burst. So certainly it goes with, as we talked about in our last episode, elections have consequences. And I don't believe under this current administration that student loans will be dischargeable. And that's not a political fact. That's not a political statement. It's just a fact. It's not very high on the priority.
Radar. Yeah. But, at least I would not say maybe dischargeable, but maybe decrease the amount to more real numbers. I mean, it's astronomical.
Well, there's been stories in South Florida where there's been certain for-profit universities that have, through deceptive sales tactics, got people to go to these universities in multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars of student loan debt, and they wouldn't ever be able to get a job. Under those circumstances, I think that there should be a change in loan. But, if you go to school and you're just not able to do that, I mean, it's really market-based. The private schools, private universities, the cost of a private school to go for 4 years is unimaginable.
Correct.
So there is one caveat though, under a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, there is a student loan program where you can continue to make payments directly to the government or your private student loan lender, and you won't incur default interest. So that is a program that the Southern District of Florida has put in place in the last couple years.
Okay, well that's great. Does the trustee make any money out of that?
The trustee in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy does receive a fee. I mean, they do have a lot of work that they do because basically what happens under Chapter 13 bankruptcy, when the plan is confirmed, you make a payment as the debtor to the trustee, and then the trustee splits that payment up to all of your creditors. So it is a lot of work. It's a lot of administration, and they're paid 10% of their distributions. So
okay,
10% on
fair.
top. It is. I mean, they do so much work. So I can't discount them for doing that stuff. The other situation where a Chapter 13 bankruptcy is very effective for our clients, it's not necessarily the current market because of the increase in value of real estate, but when there was a real estate downturn, we were able to eliminate second and third mortgages if the property was worth less than what the first mortgage was owed. And that's called a motion to value. And that's very, very effective. We also are able to do that on vehicles because there's a lot of predatory auto lenders.
Yeah, those buy here, pay here.
Right. And so if you own your car for more than 3 years, we're in the value of the car is less than what you owe, it's called a cram down. We're able to file a motion to value, and we can reduce the secured debt from what you owe to what the value of the car is. And then the balance, but the delta between what you owe and what the value is treated like a credit card, and that's just paid in the plan cents on the dollar.
Correct. And I'm always arguing with clients, you don't even need this car. So.
Right. And the other, well, you mentioned a very good point, because if you're in a position where you get overextended, you're able to surrender the car and then not have any responsibility, especially in a Chapter 7. And we see it all the time where people are going to those buy here, pay here lots or buying luxury vehicles, and they're able to, inside a bankruptcy, just hand the automotive dealer the keys, and then they're not responsible for the deficiency of the difference between what they owe.
Yeah. And sometimes I'm infamous for getting into these arguments with clients where sometimes you have to tell me, okay, listen, they're just not going to listen to you. But because I've seen situations, we had a client who had a BMW. He bought it a buy here, pay here. It had a ridiculous amount of mileage. Ridiculous. It was like over 100-something thousand miles on a car that wasn't even new. It was like from 2016.
I think it was 2016.
Yeah. And your payments on this vehicle are almost like $1,500. Mm-hmm. And then I said, you don't need this car. Surrender this car. You can get a newer one. You can get a 3 Series. Well, and he said to me, it's cool.
We see that a lot. I mean, again, people live way beyond their means, especially in South Florida. And it's a lot of flash. And, one thing I'm famously known to saying is it's a sunny place for shady people. And it seems like we meet a lot of those shady people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So when we talk about a meeting with the creditors, mm-hmm. it doesn't necessarily mean that the creditors are going to show up. I think that's the fear amongst clients.
Very much so.
I always hear, oh my God, they're all going to show up and be upset with me. And I'm like, no, they're not coming.
So a meeting of the creditors, it's also known as a Section 341 meeting because that's the section of the Bankruptcy Code. And it's a meeting between the debtor, if they're represented by counsel, we would attend with them, and the Chapter 7 trustee or the Chapter 13 trustee or the Chapter 11 trustee. All of those trustees are the middle person, the referee for all intents and purposes, correct, between the debtor, who's the one who's filing the bankruptcy, and all of the creditors. It's very rare where we have a creditor attend the meeting, with one caveat. If an individual has a judgment or has a debt with your client, oftentimes those individuals will show up, and oftentimes with very aggressive lawyers. That's always been our experiences. Sometimes if a former spouse or a relative is owed money by the debtor, they show up.
Yeah.
But, Bank of America is not showing up. No. And sometimes if there's a private lender, a private mortgage lender, they'll show up. But,
they're not.
Penny Mac or Rocket Mortgage, they're not showing up.
No.
And one of the beauties is, since COVID, and it's still to this day, we don't even go in person. It used to be kind of a schlep. We'd have to go up to the federal building in Fort Lauderdale, the federal building in Miami, or the bankruptcy court in West Palm. Now it's great. We just do it on Zoom. The one thing we'll tell you, though,
the confirmation hearing is in person. We're back in person for confirmation hearings.
In Broward and Miami, not in Palm Beach. And don't give the judges any ideas.
Everything should remain on Zoom.
The one thing we learned, COVID was very inconveniencing, except for the fact that it made lawyers' lives a lot easier, because a lot of hearings now are remote.
Correct.
And I personally, some of the old schoolers, I like seeing everybody in person. Well, you know what? I like sitting on my desk and being efficient and not having to drive to different courts and everything like that.
Not only do I think it's more efficient, I think it's beneficial for the client.
It is.
Because clients would have nervous breakdowns in person. Just walking into a federal building, and they know they're in a federal building.
Right, and you got to go through the metal detectors. You got to get pat down.
And then not
you
just
can't
that,
bring your phone.
Sometimes they're being as honest as possible, and the trustee will ask a question, and they can't even answer it because they're just the fear of God is put in them. Yeah. And when they're on Zoom, I think it's a little bit easier for them to just be forthcoming.
Yep. And what advice would you give to somebody attending a meeting of the creditors? Because you're the one that usually preps them for the hearings.
My advice is be truthful. And I tend to go over all of their financials and things like that. And my advice is always be truthful and take a deep breath.
Yep.
Before you answer anything, take a deep breath and take a minute to think before you just blurt out anything. Because I realize people get very nervous, like I said.
Yeah,
and sometimes they say things some things that are not even true. Yeah, they just say stuff.
I always say less is more, and listen to the question very carefully. Answer the question. Don't offer any additional information, because as a trustee, because I understand, because we're very friendly with all the trustees, and I'll sit down and ask the trustees, what do you think? Off the record, obviously. Mm-hmm. And the trustees are just listening very carefully and not taking anything for face value because they assume just based on their experience. Yeah. And as we go more south, the trustees get even tougher and tougher and tougher.
Yeah.
Like in Miami, fraud happens every other case.
Yeah.
And so they have a very fine-tuned ear to waiting to hear what crazy story or what crazy shenanigans they're trying to pull. Another piece of advice that's very important for all the folks that are listening and all of our clients in general is tell us everything. Because as crazy as it may be, as horrible as you think the truth is, we're
the lie is worse.
Right. We're also very experienced on it because we can plan accordingly. We have relationships with all of the local trustees. They know us because we've been doing it for quite a while, and we can be straight with the trustee. And for the most part, we're able to anticipate what the issue is going to be, and then we can prepare you for it.
Correct. And we'll be straight with you.
Right.
And sometimes it just comes down to you don't qualify for this.
Right.
And that's it. We have to look at other avenues to get you out of this debt.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what's the worst scenario you've seen at a 341 meeting? Have you ever seen anyone get arrested?
I have not.
No?
I have not seen that.
I watch too many movies.
I mean, I'm the one that goes for the most part. So, I mean, I know, like, I'll sit there and oftentimes a lot of the problems happen when the lawyer doesn't properly prepare the client for the 341 meeting, or the client is withholding information.
Correct.
And so I've had it very rarely, extremely rare, in the personal bankruptcies. We're going to shift over in a little bit to the business bankruptcies, and I just had one that we filed. And that was the worst experience I ever had at a 341 meeting. It went 2 hours because my client thought he could outsmart everybody and he wouldn't shut up. Yeah. And everything out of his mouth, there was another issue, to the point where I reached a deal with a secured creditor because I knew that the client possibly could have been prosecuted for bankruptcy fraud, and we got that case out of the bankruptcy court as soon as possible.
Correct. Is that people don't realize that their words have a lot of power. And I once, a long time ago, I had a bankruptcy case. It was a gentleman. He told the trustee said, well, how much are you paying your mortgage? He said, I don't know. The trustee said, okay, are you paying your mortgage? He said, I don't know. But he was so nervous, he just couldn't get things out. Of course, the trustee did all their due diligence. You know, they took a while to give him his discharge. Turns out he just was nervous. He does pay the mortgage. His kids do, actually, because his wife was very, bedridden and things like that. All very understandable, but you delayed your discharge because your answer can't be, I don't know.
Yeah, and a couple other kind of red flags before we transition over to talk a little bit more about business bankruptcy. It's a couple things that drive trustees nuts is the fact that when you're paying with Zelle, when you're Zelling money all over the place, I know it's very convenient, but a trustee, when they see all these Zelle payments, that raises their ire. Also, large cash withdrawals, large deposits.
Yeah. Or not knowing if you're a married couple and the wife is signing the tax returns, not knowing, and I think everyone should know what their home finances and expenses are. The saying I don't know is not a good answer.
Right.
And saying you signed for something and you didn't know what it was would probably land you in prison.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly. I mean,
we have that famous case, Teresa Giudice.
Yes.
She was arrested. She did, I believe, 5 years.
Not our client, though, by the way.
Not our client.
Thank God.
She was a housewife. And, she entered into a plea agreement, didn't know what she was signing, didn't know the returns that she signed from her husband, landed her 5 years in a federal prison.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be that person.
Don't be that person. Now, moving over, and Chapter 11, which is affectionately known, anytime anybody thinks about Chapter 11, they think of
Trump?
Trump is one. Burt Reynolds is very famous. Right before Burt Reynolds died, he was in Jupiter, and I saw him when I was walking into the courthouse.
Wow.
Yeah. And so and a lot of major retailers. So Chapter 11, for the most part, if you're a high net worth individual, sometimes high net worth individuals file Chapter 11, but Chapter 11 is mostly for businesses, and we've been successful in the past and currently helping restructure businesses. So a Chapter 11 is a very detailed, a very complicated proceeding, but it has very, very powerful benefits for a business that's a viable business. I just want to stress viable.
Yeah. So if you want to keep your company going, maybe
right.
a Chapter 11 to keep it going, or does
right.
it dissolve the business?
It does not. If you are a viable business, it allows you to restructure. So some of the major benefits, and we see it a lot in retailers, and we are, around the holiday times right now. And after the holiday season, we oftentimes see a lot of retailers that don't have the Christmas season that they're looking for file bankruptcy. But it's great if you're a retailer and you have multiple locations, because you're able to reject unprofitable leases. So let's say you're, XYZ Hardware, and you have 500 stores. And out of the 500 stores, 30 of them are not performing. You could file Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and you can reject all those leases, terminate those leases.
And just keep what, one or two?
And keep the other 450 stores.
Oh, wow.
You just have to pay,
That's a lot of money.
Well, no, you don't have to pay the full amount. And then you negotiate with the landlords, and it's usually pennies on the dollar that you're able to settle for those unperforming leases. So that is a great
Option.
Power for a viable business. The other thing is you're also, in addition to leases, you're able to reject contracts. So if you have a contract that is not a profitable contract, you can terminate that contract too, and then pay pennies on the dollar for that contract.
What if you have a company what about the assets though? I mean, I guess, do the assets get liquidated?
No, the asset. So basically what you do is there's a value of the company, and then you're able to pay, cents on the dollar. So what happens is there's different categories of creditors. There's secured creditors, like if you have a mortgage lender or if you have a business loan that's secured by all your assets, then you're able to, you have to pay. If you want to keep those, whatever the value of that real estate is, or the value of your business assets, that you have to pay back to obviously to keep those assets. But the unsecured assets, like for example, just other equipment and things like that, there's a value put to the business. And then,
so it doesn't necessarily mean you're in the poorhouse.
You are not. No, and the one misconception about Donald Trump was Donald Trump never filed bankruptcy individually. It was always his companies. He took
Correct.
6 companies and he filed bankruptcy, and it was just to restructure them. And in essence, you're just renegotiating debt. That's what's happening.
Correct. And my biggest thing with clients is, if this is something that's going to benefit you and help you reorganize your life, do it. Yeah. I personally, if I was going through a hard situation financially, I wouldn't think twice about filing for bankruptcy at all.
I agree. I mean, we look at bankruptcy as a financial planning tool. That's what I always tell everybody.
It is a tool, and I'm going to use it because the government's giving me the power to do so.
That's right. And especially with a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, when Congress was passing the law in the early 80s, in the legislative history, they said, we want to allow Americans to get a fresh start. And a Chapter 7 allows you a fresh start. And the same thing with the Chapter 13. One thing I'll tell you, if somebody makes more than the median income, and I tell them, well, if you owe $100,000 and I told you could pay $25,000 over 5 years to get rid of $100,000, wouldn't you do it? I mean, that's a sensible financial decision.
I would, but our clients don't always think that way.
Right. I mean, sometimes logic, you get a paralysis of analysis. That's what I always like to say. So all of this hard legal financial talk, we wouldn't be attorneys or human too unless we got a little silly. So let's move on to a little bit of pop culture nonsense, and then we'll finish with the lightning round.
Sure.
What pop culture nonsense would you like to talk about in this episode, Selena?
Well, we just mentioned Teresa Giudice, which, the housewife, which I love her, housewife of New Jersey.
Okay.
And, did 5 years. We could elaborate a little bit more on her and all these other housewives with a lot of financial issues because they're on this show and they're making all this money, but they're not being careful financially.
I heard I was listening to a podcast with a situation from Jersey Shore.
Oh my God.
And
yes.
it was
didn't he go to jail or he was about to because of tax fraud?
He did go for that's why I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah.
He went to jail for tax fraud, and ultimately what he was saying to everybody, and then of course miraculously he found God. So they all find God. Everybody finds it.
Yeah.
So when they're living that life, these celebrities, they go through money like nobody's business, and they're not grounded. And we're going to talk in our next episode about celebrity conspiracy theories and celebrity legal issues.
Yeah.
And comes a point in time, just how we put celebrities and we worship celebrities on a pedestal, that there are no consequences. And they feel no consequences because everybody's kissing their behind and everybody's kowtowing to them. So
facts.
I think the bottom line is that when everything is handled, you're living that lifestyle, you lose sense on how you got there, the hard work or everything like that. So that's what I noticed.
Yeah. I mean, I think people think that the IRS, because they're not knocking down your door right away or sending you, was it Wesley Snipes also went to jail?
A lot of them, tax evasion.
Yeah.
Johnny Depp has left the United States and denounced his citizenship because he has tax issues also.
No.
Yes.
Oh, I like Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
Okay.
Captain Jack Sparrow's my man,
I don't think I'm going to see him anymore.
21 Jump Street.
He's my crush. He is like my hall pass.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, he's great. I didn't know he left.
He doesn't shower, though. How do you feel about that, Judge Janine?
I think he showers. He just has greasy hair.
Oh.
Well, Lenny Kravitz doesn't either, and I'm obsessed with Lenny Kravitz as well. So is stinky or not, I'll take both of them at the same time.
Yeah,
well,
I think it's just a greasy
I would
hair.
I would expect nothing less out of you, Judge Janine. That's why you're the judge. So let's move on to the lightning round, okay? You want to ask me because I think I asked you the last time.
Well, speaking of that, okay, lightning round. We're gonna switch it up a little bit.
Okay.
Who's your favorite celebrity?
Favorite celebrity?
Not the situation from Jersey Shore.
I think I like Will Ferrell. I know that's kind of old school, but he just makes me laugh. I think he's hilarious. I love his movies. Like my life is too serious and to a degree stressful with being an attorney, and we are human too, and we do feel stress and pain. So when I'm at home just chilling, I want comedy.
I can see it. I can see it.
How about yourself?
Okay. Oh, I love Angelina Jolie. Oh, why did you make that face?
I don't know.
She is fantastic, talented, gorgeous, great mom.
She looks like a skeleton.
I don't know.
Not anymore. She's eaten a couple cheeseburgers. I saw her in her last interview.
I don't get a good vibe from her. But anyway, you're entitled to your own opinion.
You're a Jennifer Aniston.
She's a home wrecker.
Oh, she did not wreck the home.
Yes, she did. They officially, no, it's not a myth.
I mean, listen, people always blame the woman. But what about the man in the situation?
I mean, temptation always does it. I disagree with that. I think that you need to take full responsibility. It takes two to tango, as my mother used to say. Yeah.
Okay, Tyson or Brad Pitt?
That's a strange choice, but I'm all in on Tyson, man. I love Tyson.
Okay. I only bring it up because Tyson made a comment in a stand-up where he says Brad Pitt, his wife was cheating on him with Brad Pitt. And he almost beat him up.
Wow.
Facts. He actually said it himself.
Okay, so here's just something. Now you've spelled my mind. So, did you watch the Tyson Jake Paul fight?
I did. That was rigged.
Okay, that's exactly what I was going to ask
Fake
you.
News.
Yeah, but I'm not going to hate on them for making a little money. I mean, what is it, 14
Tyson
million?
made $20 million to just dance around with a freaking tattooed YouTuber.
Yeah, and show his butt on TV. I mean, I'll take $20 million for that. Yeah.
I'm happy for Tyson, to be honest with you.
I think the main fight was the girls.
Oh, that was a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that they couldn't promote the women
Yeah.
to make that much
Right.
money. So they did that fight. I call it a dummy fight.
Right.
So that way they can push the women for people to see them so that the next fight, it will be the women and it'll make that much money.
My
It's a
daughter,
smart move.
my daughter Hannah and I were jumping up and down, going crazy. Her eyeball's gonna fall out.
I mean, I think the women's fight was, rigged
It was-
too. I don't think that
Oh no! Whenever
she won.
here's a little reality of boxing. If it goes to the judges, it's rigged.
Huh. Didn't know that.
One last question. Take us home, Selena.
One last question. Florida or New York? That's a tough one because you're from New York, but you've spent so many years in
I've
Florida.
lived more in Florida than I have in New York.
Yeah, but
I'm gonna have to say New York.
oof. This is why we work together.
That's right. So I want to thank everybody for all the support you've given us. Please leave us a 5-star review. And until next time.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to Attorneys Are Human Too. Remember, give us a 5-star review and follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and wherever you get your digital content.